recording.
Okay. All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Tonight I'm calling tonight's Borough Council meeting to order. Please read the sunshine notice.
Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the 2022 meeting dates was published in the Courier News and Burnsville News on December 9th, 2021, and posted at the Municipal Complex and the Borough Library. Action may be taken.
Thank you. Please stand for the flag salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Councilman Caminetti.
Here.
Council President Corliano.
Here.
Councilwoman Dietrich.
Here.
Councilman Lemma.
Here.
Councilman Sweeney.
Here.
Mayor Skinner.
I'm here. Okay, we're opening up for public comments, 5 minutes per person for non-agenda items. That's anything that's not on the agenda. There are agendas in the back, right?
Yes.
Okay, there's agendas in the back if you haven't gotten one. It's the policy of the Borough Council that all public comments on an issue shall be limited to 5 minutes per person. Comments may be made on any non-agenda item or subject pertaining to borough issues. Comments pertaining to public hearings should be saved for that section of the agenda. There'll be no debating between residents. Comments should be addressed to the mayor and council at the public microphone, or I believe we are also on next door, so the members of the public that are on that can talk on their device. So opening up the meeting, anybody have any comments under non-agenda items?
I know there is somebody on GoToMeeting.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get them unmuted.
When you speak, please state your name and address or organization you're representing.
Ms. Connell.
Yes, my name's Lisa Connell. I live at 34 Pottersville Road in Gladstone. And I wanted to ask about the possibility of the Borough DPW installing a curb in front of my house, at least to the west of my driveway, and in front of the house of my neighbors, Carlos and Gloria, also to the west of my driveway. There is no curb or storm drains in that part of the street, and I know it's a county road. I reached out to the county, and they said, unfortunately, we're sort of in an umbrella zone where we don't have curbs or storm drains, and because of the slope from the road to my yard, to my driveway, to the drain in front of my garage, so much water comes from the roadway down that path and bringing dirt. It's beginning to clog up the drain in front of my garage that takes the water under the garage and out my backyard where it reaches daylight. So I just had called Sarah Jane and asked if the town could install a curb, and she said that I needed to talk to you folks about it.
Okay, Rhodes, you want to take that?
Sure. Sure, well, thank you for calling. And my understanding is that you have sheet flow coming off the roadway that's coming onto your property, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And have you spoken to the county about this, because it is their roadway, or not yet?
She said she did.
Yes, I did speak to the county, and they said we were in an umbrella zone where there isn't curbage or storm drains, and that I could do it, I could add a curb. I would need to get permission from the county, and so I just was wondering if you guys, as the town, were able to take care of that for me, or if I needed to contract privately.
Okay, did the county indicate that they would be receptive to you making changes to your property and to their roadway section?
Yes, she said I could do whatever I wanted or needed to do, and she gave me the name and phone number of somebody I just needed to get a permit from.
Okay.
Whose name I don't recall, but I know.
From the county, but the county indicated that they would be receptive to that.
Yes,
Okay, well, that's good. Do you have anything in writing from the county?
I don't.
Okay. Just asking because we like to have all the Ts crossed and the Is dotted. As a general principle, the borough does not make improvements to private property nor to county roadways. As you can appreciate, I'm sure that if we do it for one, then we have to do it, at least in principle or in practice, for all, or as needed, which could lead to a situation of runaway costs for the borough. So as a principle, we don't do it. If it's an emergency situation, that's another matter. Or if it's a matter of public safety, that's also another discussion. But right now, it sounds like you're getting water runoff from the county roadway into your property and need to have a curb put on where the roadway meets your property, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We would not be willing to assume the costs for that, again, unless it's an emergency or a public safety issue.
Okay. I just inquired, so Sarah Jane suggested I talk to you guys, so that I understand.
Well, we're happy to support you as well in the sense that we can contact the county or we can work with you to communicate with the county to make sure that all of the paperwork is done properly and that there are no surprises at the end.
Okay, and you don't have any way of appealing to the county with more power and authority than I do?
I don't like to make promises I can't keep, so no, I can't promise that. What I can promise you is that I will reach out to the county engineering office and inquire about the status and if they would be in any way receptive to making an improvement there. That I can promise you.
Okay, excellent. And what is your name?
My name is G.P. Caminiti. I'm the property chair, and you can reach me here at the borough either by email or by telephone if you want some support along the way.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Chief, you had your hand up? That one over there as I throw the microphone across the table.
John McDermott, Fire Chief, Peapack. Good evening. As Liberty Park is moving along, we've noticed that the section where Park Avenue used to be is now got a path across it along with some trash cans and recycling cans, parking area with paver blocks. It was our understanding when we reviewed the original plans that that area was gonna be left open with pavers put under the grass so that it would be an emergency access for the emergency services, police, fire, and EMS, to get through to Lackawanna Avenue from that side. It's my understanding that there's a proposed project to build some housing units on Lackawanna. Under the current configuration of the park, we would only have one way in to that section. If that is gonna be a frame building on both sides, as I believe may be what's being planned, and it's a multi-unit, we would have great difficulty in placing a ladder truck in the street, should we need it, with frame structures on both sides and only one way in. So while it's obviously not complete at this point, we wanted to raise that concern before the park was finished. Whether there's something that can be done at this point, I would hope perhaps something could be done to change it so that we'd be able to use that. But we do have concerns and we wanted to bring that to the council's attention. Thank you.
I just, on the second part of that, on the second access, and I, actually, funny enough, we have, under old business about the Liberty Park improvement, the proposed properties that would be going on Lackawanna Avenue, whether they happen or not, but I know there is an exit, coming onto Main Street through Malolo's properties there, which obviously you would be able to go the other way too, if we had to get emergency vehicles in there. So not through the park, that's a separate issue, which another council person will address.
Three houses down, I think the access road is already built.
Right, so you will have secondary access besides coming down Lackawanna Avenue, so you'll be able to get through there.
I was much more concerned about placement.
Sure.
And if you have structures on both sides. and
Okay, yeah.
Obviously, we have to think about and plan for the worst. If you have a fire that's really going on the one side and the
Right.
wind is right, it can easily jump to the other side. We would not be able to come down the middle through that section. We would need to be placed
Sure.
at either end.
And the second part of your question, should we answer that now or in the old business? Because that's kind of all inclusive, right?
Yeah, in terms of the mats.
Yeah, the lattice work or whatever it is.
So Chief, I'd have to check. I know on the paths themselves, because I saw them put it in, underneath all the existing paths, they do have the plastic lattice that they used as a base for the substrate and then the pea gravel and quarry process that's on top. Whether that goes all the way through to Main Street, I don't know, because I wasn't there every day when they did it. GP, do you happen to know?
The plans were calling for that, and also to be able to have the load-bearing capability for exactly that reason.
We could add
Right,
that
but
to
it
the
doesn't appear
list.
that it does, number one. And number two, they've put in a post at each end, and then they've put in a pad with the recycling and trash barrels at each end. And there are 3 paver blocks which appear, I assume, are gonna be put across at least the Lackawanna side, so 3 cars can park there.
But we wouldn't get
If
access
you
through
have
there.
vehicles parking there, we can't get through, obviously, so. And we can't get through with the cans and the posts either, so.
Well, how about if we do the following? How about if we take the plans and we review them with you? And we'll also look at what the current status is for any proposed building on Lackawanna and make sure that we're not painting ourselves into a corner with emergency response vehicles.
That would be fine.
We had an extensive meeting with everybody yesterday, so there was a laundry list of
It's
things.
an
so
ongoing
we'll
thing.
add that to the list.
Number 17.
The department wanted to raise it sooner
Yeah,
than others.
yeah, no, thank you.
It's good that you brought it up, so thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Anybody else? Any other members of the public for non-agenda items? Is there anybody else on go-to meeting?
This is Patty Sullivan, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hello.
Hi, I live at 21 Willow, and I actually just wanted to follow up about the, when we were talking about speeding, and there was a discussion about line painting on the, on the sides of the roads, the white lines. I'm glad that the sign has been placed coming down towards the center of town, the big sign, reminding people about speeding, but I just was curious about the status of the line painting.
The status of the line painting is that it was a discussion point, but it has not been decided and resolved by this council to go forward with that project yet. The next step would be, of course, to get an estimate of costs and also preliminary timeline to do that, which we can certainly do.
Okay, then my question was, what's the next step, and then how can that be? So getting an estimate and a timeline is what you said?
The next step would be to get an estimate for the work and a preliminary timeline for when that could be done. And if this governing body agrees, we can concur tonight to have our DPW head look into the costs for that.
GP, I seem to recall when we
Curious
sent,
of who, like, do I just attend a meeting in 2 weeks? I don't know who I would contact or how to keep track of what's happening.
You can reach out to me through my borough email for updates. I'm the head of roads for the governing body, so I'm happy to communicate with you about that as we move forward. Obviously, roads have certain guidelines and restrictions, so we would have to check also with our borough engineer that we're in compliance and that we don't do anything to jeopardize the roadworthiness or compliance. So
Which I
those
know
would be
that
the
was,
next
that,
steps.
that was one thing I did mention, that we'd have to see the width of the road, would we be able to do that, so.
That's correct.
GP, I also seem to recall when we talked about that idea of striping the roads, that we were going to evaluate the speeding issue after the sign went in, to see if that was
We can certainly
necessary.
do that.
To see if the striping was even necessary.
Yeah, make it part of a
I
larger
thought- I
project.
thought we discussed that when we were talking with Sergeant, I think it's Sergeant Scanlon.
Yeah, well, we've got the sign in place. The police department has placed the sign, so we can ask our police department to do another quick snapshot, a sample of what the speeding condition is like right now, and then decide what to do after that, whether it's had an effect, had its desired effect, or not so much.
Chief, can I put you on the spot real quick? Police chief, not fire chief. The signs that we just got, do they record? Do they do data stuff too, like the portable sign? Okay, great.
We were just, Sergeant Scanlon and I were just saying, we could move the sign to the other side of the street, bring it down by kind of the area of School Street where the old Sarah K lot is, try and get some vehicles heading out. So
Okay. So it's semi-permanent then, right? It's not portable.
The other solar panel sign is gonna go on Willow Avenue at some point.
Okay, oh,
I
okay.
just gotta coordinate with the DPW to get it out there.
No, is that sign, that records also?
Yes, it does.
Okay, excellent.
I'm sorry, I just was having trouble hearing. The sign that you're talking about putting in records, the one on Willow currently, that large one does not record, is that correct?
That's correct.
The trailer sign does not record, yes.
Right, yes, exactly. Okay,
All right?
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, members of the public, for non-agenda items? Okay, hearing none. Closing the part of the public comment, non-agenda item section of the meeting, we're going to old business. Discussion on Liberty Park Improvement Project and the electrical revisions to the plan. Who wants to tackle that one?
Is that me?
Probably, yeah, yes, you were.
So Nancy, I could speak to the first two, but not number 13 that just came over the wire for the low voltage. That one is deferred.
That one is deferred until we, we're not gonna
So-
discuss that one yet.
So there was a desire to, and correct me if I get anything wrong, because there was 100 items we talked about yesterday, to move the control, electrical controls that exist by the pond. It's a large, ugly structure, and the pump, the air pump and other things come off there, to a new panel that's closer to the retaining wall that will be covered in foliage, and to bring in a higher amperage of service, because right now we're kind of tapping off the dentist house and it can't handle the load. So there's two change orders that have been proposed. The first one is to install, we'll call it a new master panel by this retaining wall, and to run the electrical lines under the sidewalk to that panel. And then a second change order to run the cables underground from that panel to the pumps and the other major electrical connections within the park. So that's, I think, before us tonight for concurrence.
Well, once, we do not have those on the agenda, but we do have them ready to go if it was decided by the governing body that they wanted to move forward with it.
So the two amounts, it's 9,000, I'm sorry, 16,000 for the new service, running the new cable, going under the sidewalk, and then 9,000 for the trenching and running of the home run cables to the major voltage points. The only question I have really for the combined wisdom of the council, does that number seem right based on your experience in construction and other projects, 25,000 in total? The one baseline we do have is the electrical panel that's over by the lime kilns, and I think that was $5,000 or $6,000, and it's not nearly as complex or high-powered as the one that would be going in by the park. I have no expertise in how much this should cost, so I'm deferring to our experts, and none of them have objected to that.
Has anyone forwarded this information to Bill Ryden, the borough engineer, for his review?
He has seen it. He has not commented negatively on it, but he's not commented affirmatively on it.
I would suggest that we wait for his input and,
Do it
if
the next
necessary, get another quote.
We
that is-
cannot get another quote.
I'm sorry?
We cannot get
have to
another
work
quote.
with this
With,
contract.
he has to, the contractor
under
as
the
it is
same-
right
it's under
now,
the big
it's
bid.
under the
So
bid,
to change work, or it's
change
not
order
new
to the,
work.
yes.
And
Okay.
Nancy, you have no documentation from Bill or anyone else that those numbers seem reasonable, other than Carter Van Dyke? Is that
Other than
correct?
Carter Van Dyke, that is all I have
It's
from.
probably worth a quick review from Bill before we
I would
vote on this.
absolutely say it's
Yeah.
worth it.
So,
Okay.
so if the
And
council,
I'd
2 or 3
actually
weeks.
want to have a resolution, just so we have,
Yeah.
have the paper trail for the park project.
so if the council has no objection, what I would propose is that, so conceptually you understand what's happening, and it also includes the cost of removing the old panel, some of the cables have already been cut. Let's get a quick read from Bill Ryden. I think he could turn it around the same day and get this on the agenda for our next meeting with a letter expressing his concurrence and the reasonableness of the costs or concern. And if there's concern, let's talk about it prior to the meeting so we can resolve that.
Great. Okay,
So if he raises concern, then we bring it up with the contractor,
Yeah.
without even coming back right then.
Correct. We'll resolve it before we get to this point. But this just popped up in the last 24 hours, so.
So I had the same concern that you both had, and I'm wondering, considering how quickly the park project is moving and the need that this requires trenching to get these lines in, do we want to do a resolution tonight contingent on
It's not a bad idea.
Bill Ryden's approval? That
That's-
might not be a bad idea.
That's not a bad idea, Mark. This is moving along very, very quickly at this point, and the need to trench would hold back other work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
So I have no objection to that if the council has no objection to it. And I trust Mr. Ryden's professional opinion.
And those numbers that you threw out include the cost of the trenching.
It's
So
inclusive.
that could be part of the differential with
the-
what we have out at the lime kiln.
Correct. It's the trenching, it's the removal of the other panel. They have to go underneath the sidewalk. It was handled a little bit differently by the lime kiln. The home runs are much, much longer in length was at the lead killed. So it doesn't jump off the page as an inappropriate cost, but I don't want to make a recommendation because I don't have the background.
No, we should have Bill weigh in, no question. Do we have all the information we need to forward to Bill?
Yes, I do.
We do.
So,
I will do
so,
that.
so Nancy, will you add two resolutions tonight for?
We have the resolutions done. We'll add a line in there saying that this is
Contingent
approved
upon-
contingent upon Bill Ryden's approval.
And then if you would send Mr. Ryden's concurrence to the mayor and council as a whole, so everybody can see
Yes.
what his response is. Okay,
I will do that.
that was everything.
That's resolution 105.
No, it'll be resolution 108 and 109.
Oh, okay. Oh, so
We didn't put them on the
Got it,
agenda
okay.
because I didn't know where the discussion was gonna go.
So I need to add those when we get to the
Yes.
resolution.
Well, those should be, if you're gonna do a consent, those should be done separately.
Yeah, no,
since
they
They're
are,
gonna be
yeah,
an
yeah.
amendment too.
They will, okay. Anything else under old business? Okay, moving on to new business. Chief, Franny, you're up. We have a presentation regarding staffing from the police department.
Good evening, everybody. Mayor Skinner, members of the Borough Council, I want to thank you for permitting Corporal Duff, Sergeant Scanlon, and I to come before you tonight, present a staffing analysis and to request the hiring of a ninth officer to replace an officer we lost several years back. So thank you for your time tonight. Peapack And Gladstone Police Department is a customer service-oriented agency. Our officers exemplify what community policing means. We operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Our officers work holidays, they work nights, we do not close in bad weather or from natural disasters. Our response time to calls is unmatched. Even now with 7 full-time officers and 1 part-time officer, we continue to provide our nearly 2,600 residents with professionalism and respect. We strive for excellence in all of our endeavors. We're going to present numbers that support our request to replace. Our numbers are objective and they are valid. We used information from 2019, which was the last full year before we were all affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. My hope is that when we conclude, you will see clearly that our department is in absolute need of replacing the manpower void we've been experiencing since 2009. That's 13 years of being down over 11% of our manpower. To be perfectly clear, this is not a new officer we are trying to add. With that said, numbers are not the only reason we are here. Just as a council has financial responsibility to the residents and taxpayers in our borough, as your chief of police, I have the responsibility of providing a secure environment for our residents and our officer safety for our police officers. We want to provide a safe environment for the citizens of our borough, and we want our officers to go home to their loved ones at the end of every shift. We are here tonight seeking your support to return our police department to proper staffing. This would be of enormous help in reducing the liability of having only 1 officer on duty and increases safety for our officers so that we can be even more proactive and effective than we already are. Corporal Duff, I'd like to turn it over to you now for a brief staffing history and additional information.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and residents. We feel it's important to give a brief history of our staffing levels, what we've gone through during the last few decades, in order to better understand this topic so that everybody's on the same page. So prior to 1997, the department had been staffed at 8 full-time officers, and that included the chief of police. And then in 1997, staffing and management review had been conducted by a third party at the request of the council. And in 1999, the department increased in size to 9 full-time officers. And staffing levels remained at 9 full-time officers until from 1999 until 2008. Then in 2003 and 2004, we were able to increase and supplement that with the addition of 2 Class 2 specials, and that brought us up to 9 full-time officers and 2 Class 2 specials part-time. Then unfortunately in 2008, an officer left the department seeking employment elsewhere, and that brought us back down to 8 full-time officers. We also, over the next year or 2, lost a special, and us even more. So that ninth officer had never been replaced in 2008. In 2009, an officer retired, and staffing levels dropped to 7 full-time officers and 1 part-time officer, bringing us down. Then after several years of chief requesting to replace 2 full-time officers, the decision was made by council at that time to replace 1 full-time officers, bringing us back up to 8 and 1. And we've remained at 8 full-time officers and 1 part-time officer until April 1st of this year, when an officer resigned. Our current staffing levels at 7 and 1 part-time special, which represents a 30% reduction from where we were at our peak to where we are right now. Unfortunately, and I'd like to point out, no other police departments in our area have reduced their staffing sizes. And unfortunately, crime has not gone down. Calls for service have not gone down. The severity of the crimes that we respond to has not gone down, and our town continues to grow. As our town continues to grow, the demands placed upon our department, they continue to grow with it. So our residents and visitors, they deserve the highest level of public safety. I think we're all in agreement on that. And our staffing levels need to be kept up so that our department can continue its strive to deliver those high levels of safety to them. While we are thankful that the council has permitted us to begin the hiring process for that 8th officer that just left, just resigned, as the chief pointed out, we're not here asking for extra officers. We're here attempting to get back to staffing levels that we had 14 years ago, okay? We're just trying to return to those staffing levels. I believe Sergeant Scanlon's gonna go through the data on how we came to the conclusion of that 9th man. Again, there was reference to a staffing study and management study done years ago, and he's gonna continue on from here for the next portion of the presentation.
So the next portion of the presentation, I'm just going to hand out copies of the slides, some of which you've already seen, but the data is the most important in the presentation I'm handing out to you right now. So what I did was, I did a literature review on several studies conducted by other organizations on police staffing, and once I conducted that literature review, I then came up with my methodology, which was to take all the data and the formulas that were presented in those studies and apply it to Peapack and Gladstone. But before I start, I want to get into some of the demographics of the borough of Peapack and Gladstone. Obviously, Peapack is located in Somerset County, and as per the last census, the 2020 census, we had 2,582 residents. According to the census, that's an increase of 1.98% since the 2010 census. Breaks it down into the race and ethnicity in the borough of Peapack and Gladstone here. And a couple things I want to point out is that our senior citizens represent 20% of the population, and people under the age of 18 also represent 29% of the population. Okay, further into the census is 829 housing units, 2.7 persons per household, none of which are public housing projects. And then we get into the median value of a single-family home, per capita income, and median household income. And this is all according to the 2020 census. All right, so Peapack and Gladstone is 5.7 square miles. The Peapack Gladstone Police Department is responsible for patrolling 25.45 miles of our roadways, and it's broken down into the borough, county, and state. 19 miles maintained by the borough, 5.1 miles by Somerset County, and 2.3 miles by state highway. Also, we're serviced by New Jersey Transit. We have the Gladstone train station, the Peapack train station. We're responsible for the security of those train stations daily, and the ridership that takes those trains in and out of the city and other points. So the borough of Peapack and Gladstone has been staffed with 1 officer since 2021 calendar year. We had 8 officers. Okay, and what I did was from January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021, I created a data set. So during a year, there's 8,760 hours in a year. Out of that 4,986 hours, an officer was working alone in the borough, which represents 56.91% of the time that a police officer is working by themselves. So what I did was I took that analysis of the days where only one officer was on duty and created that data set, broken down by day, month, date, and year, the hours that the officer was working by themselves, and the total hours spent alone. So if anyone's familiar with descriptive statistics, I came up with the data set. So if you look to the left, the figure, you see bins and frequency, and then on the right, you see the total hours and averages, okay?
We have the same degree, and I remember this from my
Okay.
master's too.
So you can thank Rutgers for this.
Yeah, exactly.
So you see the minimum and the maximum at the bottom figure. You have 4 as a minimum and 24 as the maximum. So you create your bins, starting at 4 and going up to 24. And what that represents is how many days an officer worked for so many hours by themselves. So if you look at the mean, at the figure on the right, you see 13.66. So that means that on average, an officer in Peapack Gladstone is working 13.66 hours by himself. And here's a figure that maybe you can better understand in form of a histogram. So if you look on the right, you see 24 hours and 56. So 56 times last year, an officer, there was only one officer on in a 24-hour period. Now that doesn't mean an officer worked 24 hours straight. So what we did was we took midnight to midnight on any given day, and we went through to find out how many times an officer was working by himself. So from midnight to 6 a.m., there was one officer. From 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., there was one officer. That's our day shift. He goes home at 6 p.m. From 6 p.m. to midnight, there's one officer. So there's a 24-hour period. And all those numbers represent, that's 300, it all adds up to 365 days. Okay, and if you look at where it says 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, that's where we're saying officers are working 14 and 16-hour shifts. Okay, and most of the time, we're by ourselves. And that represents the amount of days that an officer is working by themselves for a particular amount of hours. Okay, so getting into the study, there's 5 staffing models that I saw that showed up in each one of these studies. There's the crime trend model, which basically says more crime, more police. Less crime, less police. Issue with that is it's ineffective and rarely used because it gives incentives for poor performance. Crime can be going up through the roof. I could be sitting in headquarters. Well, crime's going through the roof. We need more cops. I'm out there being proactive. Crime drops. We need less police, right? But it doesn't account for everything else a police officer does at Peapack and Gladstone. Authorized budgeted levels is predetermined level of staffing that fits the budget. What can I afford? All right, that can get politicized. It's a political decision. I can tell you right now, as of today, we've spent about $27,000 in overtime, okay, just this year alone. Minimum manning levels are determined by past practice, policy, supervisory judgment, or all of the above. It's a public safety and officer safety aspect. As we all know, the chief of police is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the police department. He's ultimately responsible for the schedule. If the chief determines that for public safety and officer safety, I want 2 officers to work day shift, I want 2 officers to work night shift, he can make that happen. And a hard versus soft minimum is if it's a hard minimum, that means if we have 2 officers scheduled for a shift and one calls out sick, one takes a vacation day, has time off, we have to fill that position because that's a hard minimum staffing, and that would be filled by overtime. Soft minimums are the opposite. We have 2 officers working, a soft minimum, we can do it with one officer, so we don't have to fill that second position. So that's the difference between hard and soft minimums, okay? The 2 big models that I got into in the staffing are the per capita approach or officers per 1,000 approach and the workload-based models. All right, I'm gonna get into those further on in the presentation. Per capita is how many officers per 1,000 residents, and that's it's a formula. The workload-based models are least commonly used, but it's endorsed by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. It relies on actual levels of demand. It relies on the examination of calls for service, results in comprehensive assessment of workload, and most accurate and reliable predicator of police staffing levels. This is where we take all the calls that the police department handles, all the incidents, anything that's police department related, police officer made, and it accounts for all that in these models. So in 2019, there's a fact sheet that was issued by the FBI called Crime in the United States, okay? There was one issued in 2017, one in 2018, and the most current that I was able to find is 2019. It's furnished by the FBI. All right, and it references population under 10,000 residents, and the FBI data shows in 2019 that there should be average of 3.9 officers per 1,000 residents in the northeastern part of the United States. Okay, the borough of Peapack and Gladstone's population is 2582. Based on the FBI data on officers per 1,000, 3.9 times our population is 10.06 officers. So I could argue that's 9 full-time officers and 1 Class 2 special. Okay, but these studies don't account for Class 2 specials, and they don't account for the chief of police. This is patrol officers. Okay, and here's that figure. If you see in yellow, Group 6, come down, you meet at the northeast. It's 3.9. That's for populations of less than 10,000. In 2018, it was 3.1. In 2017, it was 3.0. So you can see how the average has progressively gone up according to the FBI statistics. So there are advantages to doing the per capita approach. The community-oriented policing service, or COPS, states that the per capita method requires determining an optimum number of officers per person and then calculating the number of officers needed for the population of a jurisdiction. The methodology is simple. Okay, the data is readily available. We can get it from the census. We can get it from the borough administrator's office. It's updated on a daily basis or regular basis, and like I said, it's publicly available. So all that data is readily available. You plug it into that formula, and you come up with your officers per thousand. All right. Communities can compare themselves to peer organizations using per capita approaches that adjust for things like crime rates. All right, but I already spoke about the crime rates and how that applies. I'll get further on into that. With advantages, there's disadvantages. Okay. The drawback of this approach is that it only considers the number of police officers required per population, not how the officer is actually performing or spending their time, the quality of effort, or community conditions, needs, and expectations. A lot of the incidents or issues that we have in the borough that we respond to are resident complaints or concerns of the residents, speeding, okay, traffic issues, our quality of life issues. All that is not accounted for in a per capita model, okay? Agencies using the per capita method may risk a biased determination of their policing needs. This is due to a number of factors. To begin with, there's no widely agreed standard for the optimal staffing rate. All right, that's in every study that I read. There's no agreed standard, okay? Rather, the police rate varies greatly based on the size of the town, the location, the organization of the agency, and the type of the agency. So what works for us may not work for another jurisdiction. What works for us doesn't work for a neighboring town. Okay, we have to account for all of that. The intensity of workload by jurisdiction is not taken into consideration, like I said, in per capita ratios. Between communities of similar size, population, crime levels, and types can vary dramatically. Like I said, our neighboring towns, their crime rates and stuff vary. Per capita ratios do not account for changes in population features, such as seasonal fluctuation in tourist communities or long-term trajectories of population increase and shrinkage. Got a lot of building that's going to go on in the borough. Okay, we've got Natterow with the hotel, Vernon Manor going next door. Not sure what's going on with across the highway, you know, on Brady Drive.
There's co-obligations coming our way, we can forecast that as well.
The per capita technique ignores differences in enforcement style, service delivery, and criminal response. How police officers are spending their time. We're a community-oriented police department. We respond to the needs of our community. You know, we help the people in town. We shovel driveways, we change light bulbs, we take out garbage. You know, things that are all accounted for that we do as a police officer in this town. Staffing demands are not represented in per capita ratios because of differences in how agencies choose to patrol their jurisdictions. Just like I said, things that we do for our community differ than what goes on in neighboring towns. The Center for Public Safety Management, otherwise known as CPSM, the police department frequently refer to recommended officers per 1,000 population or a national standard for manning, as well as comparisons to other cities. There are no such guidelines. Like I said, in all these studies, there's no such guideline. There's no recommended number of officers per 1,000 either. It's all an average. Making comparisons with other communities is also pointless, as I stated. What works for us may not work in other jurisdictions. Officers per 1,000 ratios are widely used to compare departments. However, they are of little value because they do not reveal how officers are deployed. They don't reveal how officers are spending their time, what we're doing on a daily basis. It's just this many officers per this 1,000 residents, okay? A statistical ratio of officers per thousand was routinely gathered and published by the federal agencies as well as organizations interested in performing monitoring, such as ICMA, which is one study that I was provided by Mr. Lemon. It was very helpful. The Center for Public Safety Management does not recommend or consider this a valid standard for measuring staffing for any demographic. So you can see how they do the studies on this per capita ratio, but they realize it's not working, okay? And this is the ICMA, International City County Management Association. In their own paper, they state, and I quote, "Finally and least frequently, staffing decisions are based on real workload. This method, which is based on actual levels of demand for police service and matches that demand with the supply of police resources, is strongly endorsed by the ICMA. As a result, the department has a complete assessment of workload based on both calls for service and other long-term operational commitments, but offers the most accurate and reliable predicator of police staffing levels." That's putting everything the police department does together. And that's a study done by the International Association of Chiefs of Police, which we'll get into further along. So, ready-made generally applicable patrol personnel guidelines do not exist, according to the ICMA, or International Association of Chiefs of Police, IACP. Officers per thousand population ratios, for example, are completely improper as a foundation for staffing decisions, like I said, by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Calls for service and workload. Calls for service are what individuals are calling into the police department or have been reported. The workload is the time it takes an officer from the time of the call to the time of completion of the call or the incident. The amount of time required to execute proactive police actions such as directed patrol, community policing, and targeted traffic enforcement is examined in order to provide the town with a useful tool for determining acceptable costing allocation models. So those three things there: directed patrol, community policing, targeted traffic enforcement. Everything that we do here, okay? Willow Avenue, Holland Avenue, Mendham Road, Pottersville Road, Old Chester Road, speeding complaints. We have one officer working. We can't be everywhere at one time, okay? Community policing, targeted traffic enforcement. Community policing, attending those community events. It's almost impossible for us to attend these community events when there's only one officer working. All right, all because it's simple doesn't mean it's ideal. According to John Eck, professor of criminal justice at the University of Cincinnati, using a ratio to staff police is right up there with defunding the police in terms of foolish ideas. We must ask ourselves, what will it take for us to, in this community to achieve our public safety goals?
Some of those goals might be things like being proactive with our rec department and offering bike safety to our children during summer rec. Some of those things might be us being more active at Community Day or putting on some other informational program out for our community. So there's a lot more than just responding to calls, and it all depends on our staffing levels as to how much more we can engage our community and be there for our community.
So, getting into the Borough Peapack and Gladstone Police Department, our current staffing is 7 officers. We do acknowledge the fact that we are hiring to replace that 8th officer, so we should be hopefully at 8 officers before the end of the year. Our staffing consists of the Chief of Police, Sergeant, 2 Corporals, a Detective, Patrol Officer, Class 2 Special, and 1 Civilian Administrative Assistant. Now keep in mind that everyone in the department is patrol also, with the exception of the Chief. That's why these models don't include the Chief as part of staffing. It's patrol and the incidents that officers generate on patrol. Class 2 Special isn't included in these models, although we all know Officer Bobowitz does a great job backing us up, providing us with assistance throughout the day. It's all very helpful. Our Civilian Administrative Assistant, Nancy, as much as she'd love to be out there with us doing traffic enforcement, she can't. So we can't include her. All right. So you do your officers by population, 7 by divided by the 2,500 residents, you get 2.8 officers per 1,000 residents. Okay. I can tell you we can't do it with 7 officers. You add that 8th officer, you go over to your officers per 1,000, you got 3.2 officers. Now you're creeping up on that FBI statistic on per capita ratio from 2018, where it was 3.1. So now we're at 3.2 per 1,000, okay? But you add that 9th officer, and now you're at 3.6, which is even closer to that 2019 fact sheet issued by the FBI, all right, which would show 9 officers, 2,500 residents, 3.6 officers per 1,000 residents. and I can't stress enough, that's all supervisors and detectives in our police department, with the exception of the chief of police, do patrol. They go out there, they answer calls, they work overtime, they work holidays, they work weekends.
It's important to know that none of the staffing models or studies that have been done, they don't account for a chief being included in their numbers or the ratios. The majority of them also take out the investigative division of a police department and its role within staffing levels.
So, one study done by the local unit alignment, reorganization, and consolidation commission is minimum viable police department size. Okay, and what this gets into is what it takes to be a self-sufficient police department, self-sufficient police staffing of on-duty officers. So, what does it mean to be self-sufficient? It means that we can rely on ourselves to handle the initial response and backup. We don't have to rely on another jurisdiction external to the municipality. All right, maintains 24/7 coverage, and that's with 2 full-time law enforcement officers available for that response and backup. And I can tell you that we do have incidents in town where there's only 1 officer working, and they have somebody under arrest, whether it's a DWI, domestic situation, anything, and another call goes out. Our response time in the police department here in Peapack Gladstone is 3 minutes or less. I don't know how long it takes for Bedminster, Far Hills, Mendham, or Chester to respond into our town to provide us with backup when we're tied up in headquarters with an arrest. We can't leave that arrest. So think about it. If you're having a medical emergency, a family member's having a medical emergency, a fire emergency, or something else, crime in progress, we're not coming because we're tied up. We only have 1 officer working. We're not able to.
I can tell you from experience, it's happened to me. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. It's a very stressful feeling to know that you're stuck inside police headquarters, whether it be with an arrest or another serious incident, and you're not able to respond to members of your community to assist them in their time of need.
And often we know who they are. Like, we know that resident, we're like, I know that person, but I can't help you. I'm tied up in headquarters. Okay, so what I did was I accounted for 2 different models, 12-hour shifts and 8-hour shifts. We work 12-hour shifts, we do not work 8-hour shifts, but I put those statistics in there to show kind of a contrast. And we have to figure in for vacation time, sick time, personal time, Kelly time, and training, mandatory training. So at the very least, a new officer would get 120 hours of vacation time. We throw in 43 hours of sick time because that's the average number of sick time that an officer typically uses in a year. All right, 36 hours of personal time, 104 hours of Kelly time. Now, Kelly time is because we work more than 2,080 hours in a year. 2,080 is if you work a 40-hour work week, 8 hours a day, you're working 2,080 hours in a year. We work 2,190 because of our rotating shifts and 12-hour shifts. So that's where that Kelly time comes in. It's time that comes back to the office. It's almost like a comp time bank, okay? So what you do is to calculate a minimum number of sworn law enforcement officers. You take the number of hours of scheduled work, which is 365, divide by 2, and multiply by 12, and you get that 2,190. For an 8-hour shift, that's your 2,080. Then you got to take all the time that an officer is allowed to take off: vacation, sick, personal, Kelly time, and mandatory training. So an officer is available to the borough 1,833 hours out of that time that he's working. Okay, so the annual number of hours for coverage, if you take 365 days, multiply by 24 hours and 2 officers, you get 17,520 hours. You divide that by the availability of 1,833, and you come up with 9.55 officers working a 12-hour shift, and that does not include the chief. Or you do 8-hour shifts, you got 9.3. Okay.
It's important to point out that mandatory training number that's up there, that is an estimate of our bare minimum Attorney General mandated training. Our officers go through at least 54 hours of training every year. That is mandated. That is not one step above. That is not going to a course on crash investigations. That is not going to anything above and beyond. That is strictly mandated training that we must attend annually.
So along with calculating minimal numbers of sworn law enforcement officers, we want to calculate the shift relief factor. All right, this you take all the time, like I said in the last slide, all the time that it's available to the officer for time off. Then you got to account for the the days that an officer is not working because of his shift, 7 days off in each 14-day period. We work at 26 weeks in a year. Okay, we work a 14-day rotation in every pay period. So the total time unavailable is 2,541. That's taking 7 days off times 12 and times 26 weeks. You get to 2184. And then the total time unavailable is you add everything up on that chart. Okay, the time off, vacation, sick, personal, Kelly, mandatory training, and your shift time. Add that up, you get 2541. Okay, then what you want to do is you want to take the your 365 days, multiply that by your shift length, which is 12. You get 4,380. That's the hours in the year. Then you take the total time off, which is 2541. You subtract, and you come up with 1,839. You divide the two, and you come up with 2.4. All right. So that represents that 2.4 officers must be assigned to a shift to ensure one is working on any given day. So we have 4 shifts: 2-day shifts, 2 night shifts, 4 times the 2.4, 9.6 officers. Like I said, not including the chief. So the International Association of Chiefs of Police has their formula in regard to police staffing, and that's the workload model. Okay, so what you do in the workload model, you got to determine the number of complaints or incidents reported in 2021. In this case, it's 10,827 incidents that Peapack Gladstone has handled in the borough in 2021. That's calls for service, that's 911 calls, that's calls into our non-emergency line, that's officer-initiated calls. Okay, you multiply the total number of complaints or incidents by 0.75, which represents 45 minutes. That's to complete one call. That's the average according to the IACP. Then you multiply that number by 3 for preventative patrol, meals, reports, training, and supervision, and you come up with 24,360.75. All right, then you have to divide the product, which is 4,380 hours of available time for one patrol unit, and you obtain a number of 5.56, which represents the number of one officer patrol element to handle 10,827 calls or incidents in the borough. So now what do we do with that number? All right, so we got to continue. Of the 4,380 hours required to staff one patrol element, a patrol officer is not available at 1,833 hours, or is available 2,547 hours a year. So now to determine how many officers are necessary to staff one patrol element, you take the 430 hours, divide by the 2,547 of available officer hours, which results in a product of 1.72. Meaning that it takes 1.72 patrol officers are required for each of the 5.56 patrol elements necessary to police Peapack and Gladstone, not including the chief. 5.56 times 1.72 gives you 9.56 patrol officers. And that does not include specials or the chief. So that was after COVID. I ran it pre-COVID. In 2019, our numbers were 11,005 incidents. You don't have to listen to me talk through everything again because all the numbers remain the same. And you come up with 9.72 patrol officers when you do the math on the 2019 numbers. Okay, so I know I threw a lot of data at you right now, a lot of numbers. I talk really fast. But that's basically the end of my presentation. These are the references that I use throughout my literature review. But the one that's not listed on here is the 1997 study done on the borough of Peapack and Gladstone based on 1996 numbers, which states 25 years ago, we should be at 9 patrol officers. Chief.
Thank you, Sergeant Scanlon. Obviously, you put a lot of time and effort into that. I appreciate it, and very informative. Thank you. Mayor Skinner, Borough Council, in conclusion, we've come before you tonight to request a replacement officer we lost 13 years ago. We cannot continue to have officers repeatedly working 14 to 16-hour shifts. Staffing will become a liability issue as officers will become fatigued and burnout will occur. With the state of the world being what it is, I want our officers alert and prepared for anything they may encounter, both on and off duty. They need to make sound decisions in all interactions throughout their tours of duty. The residents of this town want their homes and streets safe. They support the replacement of our department in general. In turn, our police department wants to provide the absolute best service possible to the residents of Peapack and Gladstone who are well deserving. Staffing our department accordingly with the ninth officer will go a long way to achieve that goal. Somerset County Prosecutor's Office verbally recommended 9 or 10 full-time officers in 2018 when they were here. That's per conversations between myself and 2 members. Somerset County, again, when they were here, they said 9 to 10. The numbers provided to you tonight show that our department is not staffed adequately right now. You and you alone have the opportunity to correct this more than decade-old issue by agreeing to replace that 9th full-time officer. I ask you for permission to hire this officer, as we are already in the process to hire now. Thank you.
I'd just like to add something. I don't know if you touched upon it or not. There's another factor that I think needs to be considered here. So in 1999, that's when the town decided that we're gonna increase our staffing levels to 9 full-time officers. Okay, since that time, 9 officers have left the department through the course of normal attrition, retirements, seeking employment elsewhere, and sadly, termination. That happens. Happens not only in our department, it happens in every department. So when you look at that number of 9 since 1999, it works out to be an average of every 2.5 years, 2.55 years, we lose an officer, okay? So the hiring process for a police officer is not a quick one. Background investigations, getting a good pool of candidates, these are all things that take time, especially in a town as small as ours, with a police department as small as ours. The importance of hiring good people is tenfold to a department staffed by 1,000, okay? So when we look at that, the 3 of us that stand here tonight, we represent over 65 years of experience of police work here in this borough. So we can tell you from our experience that when we're at 9 guys and we drop to 8, there's a ripple effect. And that affects the department and how we operate, and we compensate for that, and we get through those down times, dropping those staffing levels. I can tell you that when we have had to drop from 8 to 7, like we currently are, that ripple is a wave, and it stops our forward progress, okay? We don't sink, but it stops our forward progress. And when we stop that forward progress, we're not helping our residents to the level that we should. So I think that's a factor that needs to be considered. That's forecastable. We can see that. We know, in fact, just using the 3 of us as examples, in the next 4.5 years, the 3 of us can retire. We are eligible for retirement, okay? So we know that people are gonna leave our department, and we know that on average, this happens every 2.5 years. So we've gotta minimize, we talked about that 56% time alone. That's quite frankly too high. It's dangerously high. We have to minimize that as much as possible. And by getting back to that staffing level of 9 full-time officers, that's a huge step towards achieving that.
Thank you, Chief Sergeant and Corporal. It's been said that we're a data-driven borough council, and I think you certainly threw a lot of data, a lot of good data at us. I'm going to go back in time a little bit here. I held Chief Ferranti's position for a few years, actually quite a few. I was part of those times when we were at 9 and then subsequently down to 7 and then back to 8 and up and down, up and down. And it is no secret, and it is and it's certainly known publicly that during my time as chief from 2009 until my retirement, I was continually asking for that 9th officer. I wish I had this data set back then that you provided today. So it's something that I have always been asking for when I was a chief, and I certainly see why you're asking for it, and I certainly appreciate the what you've done, and I certainly I could certainly support going to 9. I'm just going to put that right out there. And again, it's no secret. It's something I've been saying for years. So before I was mayor and as chief. So.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mayor. Anyone have any questions for us?
I have a couple questions myself. If I understand the number presentation, even the staffing models that are not acceptable, show us at a minimum of 9 officers. Not just the staffing model that you think is correct. They all show 9 or more.
Correct, and the FBI statistics are an average of the communities less than 10,000. So there's a lot of communities in there that are less than 10,000.
And again, that technically is patrol. We're not talking administrative staffing. We do have, Sergeant Scanlon does go out, when circumstances arise where we need an officer on the road to help out, he goes to help out. But by and large, he's administrative, he's in the office, he's putting together numbers and things like this, which, obviously help our cause here. So, that's really, those numbers speak to patrol. Again, if you look at our lineup of guys right now, we have 2 patrolmen, technically, by name, 2 patrolmen. So you look at a department of 7 guys, you think there are 4 patrolmen or 5. They're not. So that's where we're looking to. We're looking to get those guys in the trenches, out on the road, the guys you're gonna see driving around the community, in those blue cars with those lights going, slowing traffic down and answering calls. Those are the guys we're looking for.
And just for purposes of comparison, if we only have 1 officer on duty, we only have 1 officer responding to let's say to an incident at a residence. But if the EMTs were called, how many people would be responding?
By Department of Health standards, they're required to have 2 EMTs on an ambulance. So, they can't roll without 2 members.
And what about firemen?
2 also, I believe. I would defer to the fire chief.
Our preferred minimum staffing on an engine would be 3.
But on scene, you have to have 2 in, 2 out, so a minimum of 4, not including the pump operator, because two firefighters go inside, and you have to have 2 ready to go in, because the only people that can rescue firefighters are fellow firefighters. And that's a state law, right, Chief?
That is,
Or,
that is the OSHA, there is also NFPA.
So all the people that were put in harm's way, we're the only one. You guys are the only ones that would show up as single people.
Correct.
Do we have any data on how often that's occurred?
That, the first couple slides showed that, I can go back to the numbers here.
I mean, how many times has it happened that
How many-
you've
how-
been
how often
tied
do
up?
we respond
That we're
to
tied
one
up?
officer?
No. How often you've been in the situation where you've been tied up with other tasks and couldn't respond?
Well, I can tell you, it just happened during the Easter egg hunt here in the borough. Officer Corporal Morris was working, and the traffic light at Pottersville Road went out. So he's stuck running the traffic light at Pottersville Road, and I came in early to assist him because I was his relief. So, I mean, that data, I'd have to do those numbers for you. I don't have it off the top of my head. But it does happen frequently. Just yesterday, we had 2 motor vehicle crashes on the highway. Luckily, Officer Ortiz was working a distracted driver detail that he was able to help us out. So, but he wasn't scheduled for regular duty. He just happened to be here on detail.
So, just some comments. So, all of you, excellent presentation. Tom, an especially excellent presentation.
Thank you.
You and I both went through the same program and have the same degree, but you used the statistics in a balanced and fair way. And prior to this meeting, I had sent the chief the 4 data sources I found, which he referenced it
Yes.
correctly. And what was interesting to me was the UCR and FBI study. I gave you the 2018 data for Northeast per 1,000 officers was 3.1.
Yes.
And in 2019, updated, it was 3.8.
3.9.
3.9.
Yes.
So that actually skews the equation a little bit, because before it was 8 infraction and now it's
Correct.
9 infraction. So, an excellent job. Now, there are some statistics there that we might want to tweak a little bit. I would think that the overtime expenses for this year had some extraordinary circumstances in it.
Yes, I agree.
And secondly, that with a higher head count, I would think that the overtime overall would be less, because you have a better chance to cover it. So that the net cost to the taxpayers for the incremental head wouldn't be necessarily the salary of a step 12 year 1 officer. It would be that less an adjustment to overtime, which generally would be less. So I'll just pause and let the other council people talk, but it was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Sure, you'll get me. So, to all of you, a superb presentation, especially to you, Tom. extremely compelling and very well put together. I'm impressed. And you make certainly an extremely compelling argument for hiring an additional full-time officer. It's a little tight for me to come up with a few questions. I have a couple things in my head. I was wondering if you might indulge us to give us a little time to look over this presentation and let me put some thoughts together, and either I'll email them or we can, if you don't mind, we meet again in public, in a public council meeting, and we can do them publicly. Either way is fine. You know, soon, don't let this linger.
Just one thought.
The only thing I'll ask for, the only thing I'll just comment, and this is, I'm putting on my finance chair hat, is I wish you had come to us before we locked up the budget and not after, which presents something that we'll have to consider. But nonetheless, you make an extremely compelling argument. And we'll have to see how we can make that work.
Mark, can I make the suggestion that we email the comments to them in advance in case they have additional number crunching to respond?
Would you also be able to send us a copy of the study that you referenced? It's the only document we don't have.
All the studies that I referenced.
No, just
The 97 study, I
the
think he's talking
1997
about.
Sure,
study.
yeah.
Yeah, good idea.
Sure,
Yeah, it's the PDF that the Mayor Council should get.
sure.
I guess I just have some comments about the information. The data, of course, is excellent, and you can't refute the numbers. But I think the timeline was missing some details. In terms of the staff that we've lost, I think you mentioned 2.5 years. Every 2.5 years, we lose someone. I think it was in 2019 we lost an officer for reasons that were unexpected for this department, and I think it caused a lot of stress. And in my understanding of that, we weren't able to replace that officer for the time it took for an investigation to happen. So those are things that are in the background, right? And then we recently lost an officer, and we have an open head count, so we're hiring. There is an open position. We would fill that if we had the right candidate. So I guess what I would love to see from this department is more forward planning on candidates and the quality of person you want to join this department. Find them now for when we need them, because we might need someone temporarily. We had a gap September to December last year where I know Sergeant Scanlon was moved into the OIC position. That took a person off the street. So we were managing. I think that was a stress on the department, and I think we're feeling it here in this conversation because, yes, there's the data, but I think we need a little bit better planning of the personnel from the department.
Yeah, the problem I see with that, though, is we can't bank candidates. We've already had, I think, seven applications for the open spot, but in the interim, two people have been hired elsewhere. So the good candidates don't stay on the shelf for long. So you can't just say we've got all these names and these resumes in the file, and when that opening comes up, boom, call them. Right. Plus there's a cost involved with this, with the medical and the psychological
and outfitting
process.
Yeah. And equipment outfitting.
In fairness, I remember when our mayor was chief, he did his best to anticipate when somebody was leaving. Like he knew when the one officer, I'm not going to mention names, was retiring because he gave plenty of notice, 3 months. When this most recent officer resigned just a few weeks back, we had 5 days notice.
Yeah.
We couldn't stay. That was just impossible to get that staffed up that quickly.
And that was officer number 8.
What was that?
That was officer number 8.
Officer
and then we
number
were
8.
quickly into number 7. So
Right.
the scenario of 7 is not anywhere we expected to be right now. So I feel like that scenario just,
Yeah, but things are always going to come up. Somebody's going to get jammed up. Somebody's going to get
Find another job.
Somebody's going to get hurt. I mean,
Those things
life happens to police officers.
And there's
just like us.
there's no temporary police service that you can, like the Kelly temp agency, where you can get an admin person. There is not. So you can't just say, hey, I need an officer for 6 months. Let me take them. They come in. No, you can't do that. So it's when you hire an officer, it's for the long term. Even a part-time officer, it's for the long term. Yes, they're part-time. They don't work full-time hours, but and if they take another job, if a spouse decides, they're going to move across country because there's whatever the reason that they leave, it takes a while to fill that position, whether it's planned or not. And I know, and I think it's still in the budget. I always had in the budget plan for equipment for somebody going, if somebody leaves, if somebody retires, whatever, which you have that in the budget, but it's a time process. You could have 6 months, and then are you going to start, are we gonna start hey, I'm giving you 6 months notice, I'm leaving. We probably won't start the process, we as the borough, like we're gonna start getting people to apply. And even if you do, like John said, these positions, people apply to more than one police department, and they're gonna take either one, whichever one comes first, or who's paying me more. So,
We actually had that happen a couple of years back when Officer Ortiz and Kelly were hired. We actually, if you recall, we had a female officer who was, checked every box, was phenomenal. And we were actually, I believe, council was gonna make her an offer of employment at a council meeting, and we called her on Monday, and she said, I just got offered a job in Morris County. More money working with 4 other officers on a squad instead of working by herself.
Chief, in terms of a buffer, is there any harm, and I'll ask this to the council as well, to have a second special, regardless of the change to head count, in the cohort and available to call as people are sick or injured, somebody who might be recently retired and looking for some part-time work?
Yeah, absolutely, sir. That's something I definitely would love to do. I'd love to add a second Class 2 special. It definitely helps out. manpower-wise.
And not that they're gonna be there every day, but as you need them, you have a second person to call.
And Don, as you know, it takes just as long to hire a Class 2 special as it does a full-time
We were
officer.
very lucky
But
with the
there's more
special we have.
flexibility.
But there may be an exceptional opportunity with a recent retiree that
Yeah,
we could bring on board.
but that's not, I still don't think that gets us to the number that we need to be.
No, there are two separate discussion points.
I think, and Mayor, you can probably best speak to this, because when I got hired, that brought us, within 2 to 3 years, that brought us to 11 when we hired the 2 Class 2s.
Correct.
So that was the most manpower we've ever had here, and it was, a great working atmosphere. There wasn't that overload of work. Yes, you came in, you worked your 12 hours, you went home. Guys were looking for overtime at that point. There's no overtime, all right, so road jobs. Now it's, well, not daily, but it's close to daily that there's something.
And I think the other thing with, it gives depth to the bench, if you want to use an athletic term. Right now, you've got a short bench, especially since basketball season is over and everybody talks about the depth of a team and the bench, how many people they can rotate through.
Everybody doesn't talk about that.
I didn't say a specific team, I said
Everybody in his
a specific
world
sport.
So
Pick whatever sport, we have baseball going on too, but the depth in the bench, that you have people that you can pull, and not just like they're sitting there, you don't use them. Class 2 specials are in the schedule, they're working, they're just not working the number of hours. So it's not like they're sitting home waiting for the phone call, it's, they're scheduled into the schedule, and it's just a little bit flexibility and obviously less time that they work.
Is there anything that prevents us tonight, while we deliberate on the incremental increase to the full-time force, of authorizing a second special to be used only as needed? There's no minimal net cost to the borough in trying to recruit that. And I'd hate to be in a situation where somebody said, oh, if only you had called me a week ago, I just, took that special's job in Far
Well,
Hills.
we'd have, we would have to tweak the budget a little bit, or look through your budget to find a little fat, because we have enough, we have money in the budget every year to upfit one officer. And this Class 2 special has to be upfitted pretty much the same cost.
Yeah, it would be fairly de minimis.
It's not a huge number, but but we have to have.
The reduction in overtime alone would cover.
And I would also, we can't hire this Class 2 special to not be called only when needed. We need to put them in the schedule, because policing is a perishable skill. So they have to be in the schedule, they have to have, a certain number of hours, and so, not like, well, we'll only call you when we need you, it's like, you're part of the department, you're working.
And
But
some
given the
people
shorthandedness they
could
have,
come
you
in
can
with
guarantee
wanting
they're
so
gonna be
many
working.
hours. They could say, I wanna work 20 hours, some could come in and say, I don't wanna work more than 15 hours.
Right.
No, I don't agree. I'm not looking to Band-Aid this solution immediately. Let me analyze, I think we should analyze the data, meet back with the chief and whomever else he chooses, and let's make a permanent solution.
Okay, well, let's make both decisions in fairly short order, perhaps at the next council
Well, I
meeting.
think I suggested that already.
Don, I think they would like both the Class 2 special and the additional officer,
Yeah,
so I think,
I was just looking
I don't,
for ways to
I'm
do this.
not criticizing that suggestion at all.
2 weeks till the next council meeting, so, yeah.
I just wanted to point out also, next Tuesday, we're going up to Morris County. They have 7 viable candidates for a full-time position. So we we are going up to preliminary interviews with 7 candidates, unless one's hired between then and now, we'll be down to 6. But we're going up there next week to interview them as well. We'll set up interviews with the candidates we have that turned applications in here. So there is a little bit more of a pool. We've reached out to a couple different academies as well, Ocean, so we're hoping to get some more candidates on that list.
When does Morris graduate? June?
Beginning of June.
At least you had candidates this time.
That's towns around us, they advertised and they got no one.
Well, not very lucky.
We did get
You need to act on that quickly.
get some candidates that are very viable. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. It's no secret that I'm a data-driven guy and that I ask for data points all the time. And you certainly delivered. So lots of data points, no question about it.
You're gonna leave smiling tonight, aren't you?
Well, this is how we make decisions. This is how I like to make decisions, and that's good. Just off the record, or well, it's not possible off the record, but how many hours did you work on the presentation?
Well, I had the 2 weeks to work on it. If this was my research project similar to what I did for Rutgers, it would have taken me 6 months to actually hand you a report.
Did you have any outside help? Did anyone help you with it? Any residents or council
No,
members?
provided me with some studies. The chief provided me with some numbers, and then I just sat in my office. Looks like a bomb went off in there. I can hopefully clean it out now, and just put everything together. I don't want to keep plugging Rutgers, but if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have been able to put this together like I did.
Very impressive.
Got it. Well, Rutgers does a good job, no question about it, and that's good to see. This might sound a little counterintuitive, but I would like to see some more data that you already have. I'm not asking for any more work or effort or input. But when I was in graduate school, we were taught that there's a big difference between descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. So to describe something is not the same as drawing conclusions. So I would like to see some of the primary data so that we can look at the statistics that you compiled, and also the conclusions that were drawn, and also some of the modeling that was done. So I'd like to walk through that. Absolutely keep an open mind on this. This is a wonderful, wonderful presentation, so I thank you for that. And we'll take it from there. The reason for the data-driven decision-making is very simple. It's no secret that we have lots of things pulling at us in different directions. Some things small, for example, the woman who dialed in before the resident and asked for a curb, and some things not so small that have longer-term consequences. Police is a big part of our budget. You know that. I mean, that's no secret. It's the biggest item in our budget.
In any town's budget, for that matter.
That's no secret either. So we have to do this very cautiously and to do it prudently. And I ask for your patience as we go through a little bit more. I'd like to see all your references.
Sure.
There were lots of citations in here.
They're all on there.
Including the one from 1997.
Sure.
He's gonna get us that.
Okay, and do you also have the most recent one from the Somerset County Prosecutor's Office when they were in?
The Somerset County Prosecutor's Office did not supply us with any documentation on it.
Because that was referenced.
It was just a verbal conversation. I called up and I asked the retired lieutenant,
Okay.
captain, now Captain Shutter, what numbers were discussed, and he said he couldn't remember exactly, but he said 9 or 10.
Mhm.
So I asked for documents. They said they didn't have any documents.
Got it, so there's nothing there. Okay. Well, if it's not there, you can't share it with us, so,
I wish I could.
okay. And then to Council President Corigliano's point about getting together and looking this over and formulating some questions, I would suggest that we do that. Maybe we take a little task force among the council members so that we don't have to schedule a special meeting or anything like that.
Do it at the next meeting.
And go through it. Well, we can do our homework before the next meeting too. And
I think it just makes sense if we put together your questions, your concerns, get them to Chief Ferranti, so that he has time to respond at the next meeting.
I think we need to be open to a special meeting because keep in mind we have budget presentation at the next meeting also. So
yeah, from a budget standpoint, the timing is not
Do
great.
like a separate day special meeting?
Why
Yeah,
did
yeah,
this
yeah,
come
yeah.
up now? Why not this time last year?
Go ahead. Good.
Or the year before?
We've always discussed.
No,
I mean,
I'm just
the chief,
confirming you
the
wanted
fire
to do
chief
it.
had come
a
Yeah,
separate.
for this purpose,
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah. No,
for
no,
budget
Just
schedule, because that's what
numbers wise, it wasn't.
definitely, it's gonna take some time.
Okay.
I don't have all the insight into that, and you might be able to help.
So I'm sorry,
Okay.
We were just, we were saying why now versus, last year at this time.
Well, I'm not gonna, to be clear about it, I mean, you have asked for, you've asked for it, and my response to you was that, for us to go down that road, we need to do a presentation to the entire council, in public, so everyone can see what the issues and concerns are. And, I concur with everyone here. I mean, you guys really hit it out of the park for me.
Thank you.
May I
All right.
just ask a follow-up question, or one I should have asked earlier? How does it work on mutual aid? So if Far Hills needs us and we have one officer, what's happening there?
We go, most of the time, if they request us, we go, even if we're one officer. So we will head out down to the Far Hills or Bedminster to back them up. We do that. Because they will do the same for us in return. At 2 o'clock in the morning, that's what we're getting. We're getting those guys to help us out, whether it's medical calls, domestics, something trivial, car crash.
And while that was
So-
happening, if something happened here in town, then we'd be waiting for mutual aid to respond here. It's kind of a domino
It's
effect.
backfill.
It does happen sometimes, not a lot,
Yeah.
where we'll have to take somebody to the county jail. Now there's nobody in Peapack Gladstone. Now Far Hills is covering their town and our town until we get back.
And you have to have 2 people.
Correct. And we have to have 2 people to transport to the county jail.
But mutual aid it goes back and forth. We give it, they give it, we get it, they get it.
Absolutely. If we can supply somebody on a mutual aid, we can send some.
And if you're down there on mutual aid and the call comes back in, then usually it's, at least in my experience, like unless we absolutely can't leave, then we come back to handle the call here.
Depending upon the type of call.
Right.
We will, and if it's something where they can handle it, it's locked down, maybe Bedminster's showing up as well, then we can clear and come back, but it just depends what the call is.
Do we wanna allow public to ask questions?
Yeah, well, we'll just open this up real quick to any members of the public, rather than wait till agenda items, because that's towards the end of the meeting, and this is all fresh, and tons of statistics and stuff. Does any members of the public have any questions? Yeah, step up, name, address, thank you.
Stay here.
Or shout it.
They'll hear me. Ronald Hill from Gladstone. Presentation of these guys just offered was outstanding. I think it's time we move up to the standards we're supposed to be at. And that means listen to these guys. I hear this data stuff that you guys wanna run through. I've been around long enough to know that when we start talking data, it takes a long time before we move to do anything. Also, I'll throw one other fly into the ointment. Does anybody know when the last time was we had a lieutenant in town?
It's before my time. That's 35 years.
Pete Bocchino, one of your police chiefs. It's time to move that up to where it should be, to today's standards, meaning that maybe get rid of the corporals and promote up to sergeant, give the sergeant up to a lieutenant or whatever. Give tests for that so you can move on. People, it's time to move up. These guys do a hell of a job taking care of the community. The guys you got on this police department seem, and I don't know how we've done this, seem to all fit into this community. They're all very personable, very nice guys, but they all fit in, and we shouldn't forget that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for, Ron, thank you for your comments, Ron. Any questions on the presentation or? Sir?
Yeah, hi, Mike Coppice from Willow Ave. Just a couple questions. One, can we get a copy of that packet that Sergeant gave out to everybody?
Here's an extra. If anybody else wants a copy,
We can post this on the website tomorrow
Okay.
morning.
sure.
Okay, it'll be posted publicly.
Other couple things. One, Amy mentioned planning ahead and all that. I think while we're interviewing, if there's 6 candidates now at one place, maybe we should plan ahead and look at 2 of them. And that would get us up to 9. While the interviewing process takes time and money. So while we're doing it, we could get 2 for the price of 1. And you also asked why wasn't this brought up earlier? I think we talked about it 4 weeks ago, when I asked how many people were on staff. Not necessarily related to the budget, but when we talked about staff.
Typically, I know, and not to speak out of turn, but having experience, when we interview people, they're put on a list. So you know, hire number 1, maybe number 2, and then 3, 4, 5. But typically, when you go, say, 6 months, a year later, hey, are you interested? Because we have another opening. Typically, while there was a list, as was said, those people have gained employment somewhere else. So you've got to start over again. I mean,
But
if
if
it's
we're hiring people out of the academies now, I'm assuming they're gonna be at the lower end of the pay scale, where we could get
That's not necessarily.
Not
if they're out of the
But
academy, yes.
a better chance, yes to no. So there's a good chance we could get two guys at the $48,000 to $58,000 range for the
Right.
price of the officer we just left.
So just so you know, when we interview, we will interview all the candidates.
Right.
As long as they're a viable candidate for us, we will interview them. And then usually what we do is we rank them.
Right.
And order that we like to see them. So we do an initial application, we review that, see if the candidate matches up for, they have the credentials that are required for the position. Some will apply and they don't have them. So they're told that they must have them. So what we'll do is we'll then go through, we'll interview a second round, give them a more in-depth application, references and those types of things. And then we create that list and we go from there. A lot of times I think the police committee and the council has interviewed as well.
we have.
Just so everybody gets a feel for.
Again, you can get a $48,000 guy and a $60,000 guy for what we just retired.
Actually, it's
Or
100,
260
it's
is a little-
108,
just a little bit.
we lost 108,000.
Yeah,
with the
60
person
and
who just
48 is
resigned.
108.
Oh, wow.
So we could
Sorry.
I'm just throwing rough numbers out. I know benefits play into it depending on whether you get a single guy, a married guy, wife may have benefits. You know, there's a million things that factor into it, but rough numbers, there's a good chance we could get, or seems that way, we could get two guys, even if we go 10 or 20% over the 108 while we're hiring now,
Well-
and then be prepared as Amy suggested.
But I think we're certainly we're looking to have a special meeting to crunch all these numbers and digest this sooner than later. So it'll be a big topic to chew off at a at a general council meeting. So we're gonna have a special meeting for that
Will that
very
be
soon.
open to the public?
Oh yeah. It's an open meeting, but it'll be just for that topic. Just so that way we can spend 2 hours or whatever. Maybe it'll be 15 minutes, maybe it'll be 2 hours, 3 hours, but at least that way it's just on that topic versus, I mean, we've got all the other things to do too.
Right.
So,
I
and
appreciate everybody
there's a lot to
devoting
digest on
The
this.
extra time, I think the residents as a whole appreciate it as well.
Sure.
It's important to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments on? Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Great job.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time tonight.
Okay.
Moving on to miscellaneous discussions and approvals. Anything? Okay, further moving on, reading and approval of minutes, regular meeting minutes of March 29th. Do I have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of the 29th of March?
So moved.
And a second, please?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Caminiti?
Yes.
Council President Corliano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemma?
Yes.
Councilman Sweeney?
Aye.
Okay, special budget meeting minutes, April 7th. Do I have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes for April 7th?
So moved.
And a second, please?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Caminiti?
Yes.
Council President Corliano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemma?
Yes.
Councilman Sweeney?
Aye.
Regular meeting minutes of April 12th. Do I have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of April 12th?
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Caminiti?
Yes.
Council President Corliano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemma?
Yes.
Councilman Sweeney?
Aye.
That's not for the TVs. I was trying to.
Okay, ordinances, introduction of ordinance 1111-2022, ordinances set the compensation of the mayor, borough council members, department heads, and municipal employees. Do I have a motion to introduce ordinance 1111-2022?
So moved.
And a second. Roll call, please. Vote.
Councilman Caminiti?
Yes.
Council President Corliano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemma?
Yes.
Councilman Sweeney?
Aye.
Ordinance 1111-2022 is introduced and shall be published in summary in the Burnsville News, and that the public hearing for said ordinance shall be held on May 24th of this year at 7 p.m. or shortly thereafter. Introduction of ordinance 1112-2022, ordinance to amend chapter 23, land development ordinance of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Peapack and Gladstone, amending Article 11A MUAH, mixed use affordable housing zone, and amending Article 11, establishing a new overlay zone within the ORL, Office Research Laboratory Zone. That was a mouthful. I should have had you read that. I have a motion to introduce ordinance 1112-2022.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Caminiti?
Yes.
Council President Corliano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemma?
Yes.
Councilman Sweeney?
Aye.
Okay, ordinance 1112-2022 is introduced and shall be published in summary in the Burnsville News, and that the public hearing for said ordinance shall be held on May 24th, 7 p.m. or shortly thereafter. And remind me not to read that. Resolutions, yeah, right? Oh, I didn't see these.
Are we doing a consent?
Yes, I'm gonna do a consent of, resolution 95, 96, and 98-2 through 102. So it's 95, 96, and 98 through 102. So I have a motion to accept those resolutions on our consent agenda.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Caminiti?
Yes.
Council President Corliano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemma?
Yes.
Councilman Sweeney?
Aye.
Okay, they passed. Resolution 97-22, resolution delineating the Lackawanna tract as an area in need of rehabilitation. Do I have a motion to, we'll have a comment on that after we.
So moved.
Second.
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 Okay, do you want to, quick,
Sure. So as part of the borough's affordable housing obligation, the borough came to an agreement, the borough and the Affordable Housing Committee came to an agreement with the Melillo developer to modify a few zones and make our affordable housing obligation. I won't go into the numbers, we've done it before. But the bottom line is what we are doing is we are putting this was the ordinance that had a first reading before. We're putting an overlay on a property on Route 206 that allows the existing building there to be converted to storage in exchange for the construction of 5 affordable housing units on that piece of property, the ability to install and manage an electric vehicle charging station on that property. In addition to that, the developer, who we all know is Melillo Equities, and already has the zoning to build a development on Lackawanna Avenue, as part of this package deal, requested that the area be designated an area in need of rehabilitation, which allows him certain tax breaks and funding that are necessary to build that development and more so to construct the 17 affordable housing units that would be associated with that development. One of those items is designating the area an area in need of rehabilitation. This is very, very different from what was discussed last year when we negotiated with Melillo Equities, designating the area an area in need of
Development.
Redevelopment.
Thank you very much. I started there for a second. Very, very much different. It is not nearly as difficult to grant. It is not nearly as onerous in terms of tax abatements and such that would have to be absorbed potentially by the town, and that is why this is being done. From this point, this resolution and the attached plan go to the Land Use Board for their review.
And just, Mark, just to clarify, the tax break is by statute is limited to a 5-year period, where during the first year, there's no tax on the improvements to the property, and then it's 20% the next year, 40% the following year, and then by the end of the 5 years,
60
they're at
and 80,
100%.
that's 100%. That's exactly correct, John. Thank you for that.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Caminiti?
Yes.
Thank you.
Council President Corliano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemma?
Yes.
Councilman Sweeney?
Aye.
Okay, resolution 103-22, authorization to pay B&K Construction, Inc. for the work associated with the Liberty Park Improvement Project. I have a motion to approve resolution 103-22.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Is there any discussion on that one? No, right?
No.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Caminiti?
Yes.
Council President Corliano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemma?
Yes.
Councilman Sweeney?
Aye.
Resolution 104-22, resolution appointing Daniel McGill as project manager of the Liberty Park Improvement Project. Motion to approve resolution 104-22.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Caminiti?
Yes.
Council President Corliano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemma?
Yes.
Councilman Sweeney?
Aye.
Okay, Resolution 10522, resolution authorizing change orders 5 and 6 from V&K Construction for Liberty Park Improvement Project. Motion to approve Resolution 10522.
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Just a quick discussion so people.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. This is a cost neutral change. It was determined by our engineer that a polymer is not needed in the pathways, so there's a $3,500 credit for it. And there was a section that was out of scope for development on the rear end of the pond along the river that wasn't gonna have gravel down there, and we determined that it would be best to have matching gravel to the new non-polymerized paths, and that costs $3,500. So it's an authorization to put that down, remove the polymer from the curved paths, and net zero cost of it.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Councilman Caminiti?
Yes.
Council President Corliano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemma?
Yes.
Councilman Sweeney?
Aye.
Okay, resolutions 108 and 109, I don't have those, so can you read those? They're the ones
it'd
that
be
are on
res-
deck.
Yeah, it'll be resolution authorizing change orders for, 7, from V&K Construction for Liberty Park Improvement Project. That would be 107, and 108 would be resolution authorizing change orders for, number 8 from V&K Construction for Liberty Park Improvement Projects.
Both of which are subject to Bill Ryan's approval.
Yes.
We'll make that,
Nancy, the agenda has executive session as 107.
oh,
Should we
Yeah,
just-
108, 109.
should we-
108, 109 then.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So should we, do I have a motion to approve resolution 108 and 109 contingent upon the approvals or the
The amendment to
the amendments with Bill Ryden's
Yes.
stamp of approval? Roll, do I have a motion
So
So
moved.
moved.
and a second?
Second?
Roll call vote.
Councilman Caminiti?
Yes.
Council President Corliano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemma?
Yes.
Councilman Sweeney?
Aye.
Moving on to bills list, resolution 10622, approval of bills as signed and listed in the payment list. Can you please read the amount?
$192,427.97.
Council have any items that need to be pulled for discussion? Hearing none. Motion to approve resolution 10622.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second?
Roll call vote.
Councilman Caminiti?
Yes.
Council President Corliano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dietrich?
Yes.
Councilman Lemma?
Yes.
Councilman Sweeney?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to council reports, finance.
Mayor, the only thing I have is at our next scheduled council meeting, we will have the budget presentation and our second reading and vote on the budget for 2020.
Great, thank you. Sanitation and sewer?
Yes, so on the Regional Sewerage Authority for STAB, the authority has celebrated its 49th year in operation at the Miller Pump Station. As you can imagine, the age of the equipment is showing, and there's a variety of work that needs to be done that will be about $1.7 billion. We've applied for a grant to the county, and that is still in review. However, working with Robin Ray, we just finished applying for a grant through Congressman Malinowski's office for $1.2 million. It has been favorably received, but they should be voting on it within the next month or so, so we'll keep our fingers crossed. And if that money comes through, that'll be a big boon to all 3 communities, Bedminster, Far Hills, and Peapack Gladstone, to help cover those costs.
Great, thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just one thing, because health isn't on here separately. I just wanted to mention, the health department continues to offer free tests if you have insurance for COVID, and that's posted on our website. I was concerned in that some of the money from Congress expired, necessitating those who are uninsured to have to pay $75 for the test, which I felt was excessive. I spoke with Lucy Forgione, who's, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, and you know, there are alternatives to a PCR type of test. So PCR is a polymerase chain reaction. It's a very accurate type of test. There's something called a lateral flow test, similar to Binex. Those tests generally cost between $12 and $24. And I'm thinking that the people who can't afford insurance can afford a $75 test. So with some encouragement and all kudos to her, was able to obtain, it's in the works, 2,000 of those tests that will either be given out for free or at cost for those people who don't have insurance. So, just something we're trying to do to help the members of our community where this poses a particular financial burden.
Plus, there's a program where the federal government, you can go online and order 4 test kits for an address, and they just allowed you to do another 4, correct?
Yes, it's a total of 8 tests in
Per
2
address.
groups of 4.
Right.
And you can also go to CVS and get the Binex
Sure.
lateral flow immunoassay tests, and they're $23 at CVS. But if you get it for free from
Right, from the
the
federal
Board of Health,
government, yeah.
even better.
And
So-
if, like I said, the federal government, if you go online to we can put I think if it's not on there, we should have it on there.
Yeah, it's the Postal Service
Right.
actually is.
So they'll send you 4 free test kits to an address, and you can get 4 more, so.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So, just our
Thank you.
effort on behalf of the residents that are feeling some financial pain right now.
Borough property.
Good. Sure, yeah, quick update on Liberty Park. As you know, we had initiated quality control review and engineering review by our borough engineer, Bill Ryden. We've had multiple discussions back and forth. Some information has been circulated, and Bill came back with his observations on site, which of course are going to be put together with our observations on site. And all of this will result in an updated punch list for the landscape designer, Carter Van Dyke, and also B&K Construction, to address going forward. So we had to make some minor adjustments, nothing too dramatic yet. But that having been said, we look forward to the park reopening sooner rather than later. We don't have a date certain, but we're working on it, and the progress is palpable. So stand by for those changes.
Okay. Great.
And
Yeah, I'll just add,
for the reopening.
we're very focused now on getting more of the small details taken care of. We appointed Dan McGill as the construction manager, who's going to be out there 4 days a week now. We're meeting on site with Carter Van Dyke and a cohort of council and municipal officials on a weekly basis. By the way, the next one will be Friday. I'll send out an email shortly.
Next week, right? Not this week.
Yeah, next week.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Yeah, the council should deliberate now that we have better clarity as to what things will look like. There are certain things that were excluded for a variety of reasons from the park project that aren't critical, but were desired in a conceptual drawing. And at some point, we should probably discuss those and see if we want to do a change order to include them now or defer it to some future date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fire and first aid. Don, since you're
I was not at the last fire meeting. Kingsley, Jamie told me there was nothing of any significance at that meeting.
Not really rising to, I can't give you the number, the call numbers or anything. Probably should have reported.
It's in our report,
I
yeah.
don't have them off the top of my head.
Yeah, it was in our monthly report, so that's filed. So
Okay.
no further report.
Police.
I think it did enough damage for one night presentation.
Roads and transportation.
Yeah, just very quickly, we're still waiting for striping on Jackson Avenue, and even though it's not a borough roadway, St. John's Drive was repaved this week, which I'm sure made the local residents very happy.
Wow.
And I had to think of Ken
That's
Tiger,
gotta be the first paving in 50 years.
and I was thinking about Ken Tiger and wondering if we should dedicate a plaque to him and all of the,
Well, he stopped spinning, I can tell you
Energy.
that
So, you
much.
know, that was only a base coat that was put on, that's not the final.
well, it
pavement.
doesn't matter. The residents on
residents
St.
are
John's
ecstatic.
they're not sleeping. They're so excited, so.
Now they'll have races up and down, and they'll have a speeding
Careful
problem
what
to
you
come
wish
with.
for, right? So, and that's it for roads.
Okay.
JP, when it comes to striping, can we keep on the list in front of Coco Lux where the orange
Where
cones
the
are there? I
cones
think
are?
we talked about adding striping there
Mhm.
instead
Right,
of
there's
the
a no parking
cones.
zone, yeah.
Those cones are pretty unsightly, I think,
They are, but I think they're effective.
I'm sure.
And a no
Because-
parking sign in the middle of the zone too
Yeah.
is really helpful.
It's pretty
Yeah.
ungainly too. so-
Right.
Nobody's
It'd
moving.
But
be
yes,
nice
thank you
if-
for
it'd be
reminding
nice
me.
if they were gone.
Yes.
They're unsightly.
But it's dangerous when people park there because pedestrians can't see. So
Definitely.
zoning and construction, I have nothing. Legal.
Mr. Mayor, working on a number of things, but nothing that warrants reporting this evening.
Administrators report.
Nothing tonight.
Okay, I have nothing for them, other than the mayor's report. We will be doing Memorial Day. It will be on Memorial Day. It will probably be out back here. It will probably not be at the park, but we're lining that up on Memorial Day. Public comments for agenda items, 3 minutes per person. Pardon?
Can't walk on the grass seat.
Yeah. It's a policy of the Borough Council that all public comments on an issue shall be limited to 3 minutes per person, and that's on agenda items. There'll be no debating between residents. Comments should be addressed to the mayor and council at the public microphone, and again, as in the past, please state your name and address on agenda items. Come on down.
Come on up. Ronnie, go first. No, you're older, so you don't know.
I think we're splitting hairs
There-
now.
There's no debating between residents.
Put my hat on the other way. There you go. Fire department. 2 items. I'll defer comment on the police issues. I thought they did a great job, but it's a subject for another time.
We do need, we know who you are, but we need your name and
Mike
address.
Scoria,
Sorry.
10 Tiger Hill
Thanks.
Drive,
Thanks, Mike.
Gladstone. The Somerset County Open Space just recently published, and I just got it yesterday, where they are putting out funds for parks, recreation, and several other areas out there. It's a brand new program they have. So my question is, who goes out to look at what's there, and is there anything that can be done to tap into those funds, perhaps for Liberty Park, for some of the work, for some of the funds we're taking out of current OSAC funding, or have taken out, so that we can reduce the amount from our funds, put it more towards property acquisition. I have just seen it, it just came in, as I said, late yesterday, and I don't know who to speak to on this council, or should I speak to Nancy or somebody to see?
You can send it to me, Mike, if you can, send me the link or send me the information and I'll look into it
All right.
and coordinate with Nancy.
Actually, we've recently used that program for the people who sit up there, went before that committee last year and got $500,000.
Oh, that's, the County Open Space Committee, we met with
Yeah.
them for the Nelson property.
That's right.
But you know what, I would, GP, with all due respect, I would flip that to Jamie as the OSAC person.
Yeah.
This is brand new.
Yeah.
Just came out. More
Yeah, Jamie's
funds.
not here tonight, but she'll be back
That's
next
fine.
time, so we'll.
I can forward it over to
Yeah.
Jamie.
Well, the program.
If you send it
the
to me, then I'll
program's
forward it.
existed For many years. However, I think they announced recently, I saw the same announcement, was that they fortunately funded it again.
Yep.
Because funding is a year-to-year
And the
thing.
funding is for parks, recreation, et cetera, so it looks like there may be more money there for us in that process. Second item is, you have a special budget meeting, as I had heard. How do I get a copy of what your budget activity is so far? That you've approved or that's under consideration for all that, for all the departments?
What
Are
can
you
we
talking
put
about the
online?
2022 budget?
2022 budget.
The user-friendly 2022 budget that's gonna be is up on the website already.
That's for everything that's been considered so far.
Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of get used to it, Mike. It's not like what you were used to seeing with,
Numbers
you know,
just down on a sheet.
with the various sheets for each department broken down. But, you know, but it is a useful tool.
Okay, it's on.
And we do have a printout of it in the clerk's office, so you can come in and look at it at that point there also.
And
But
Mike,
it's
I'm
online.
always happy
But it
to
is
take a call
online.
and explain any item to you or the whole
Well,
thing.
that's a long call, that's all I can say.
Whatever it takes.
Nancy, do you have a
You've
user-unfriendly
never seen
budget
him order
for life?
takeout. That's a long call for him.
Is it possible for me to make one comment on what the police presented here?
Yes, it's agenda items.
All right, having
3 minutes, you're up.
it's
We
necessary.
used a few minutes of it ourselves. I'll give you 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Having
or-
sat on that council for so many years, okay, 21 to be exact, gone through the police study back in 97 and then afterwards with the prosecutor's office. I'm not sure if Ron was on the council then or not. I know Sweeney was somewhere around coming on.
In '97, no, I wasn't up here.
The prosecutor, when he tells you what you need, he's not concerned about numbers. He just gives you a number. As many of you may recall, we went through a lot of investigation by the prosecutor because of our department. The way it was run, questionable, and a lot of things that were said about it. They came in and did their study, and we had our meetings, and I was part of that. It wasn't a question that, how did you get to your numbers? They pretty much told you. And it was 10 at that time, and we did agree to go to 9, chief, and the 2 specials, because I was part of that consideration back then. And I can only say it seemed to work real well. I would hope that you do not get into a position
of having to argue with numbers, et cetera, when you're down to 7 or whatever it is, because you really don't want the prosecutor coming in and telling you. He's not gonna listen to what you think are data metrics. He's gonna tell you what your need is, and that's what you're gonna have to accept, or he's gonna come in and run your department, as he did for a while. That's all I have to say on that.
Thank you, Mike.
Took more time than you should have.
I know, only got
Ron, I'll give you 3 minutes and 10 seconds. How's that?
That's good. Ronald Hill, Gladstone. The project manager in the park, aren't we kind of late with that?
So, Dan, is a good question. I'm sorry, Ron, it's a good question. The Carter Van Dyke is actually contracted as, and project manager maybe is the wrong word, maybe more construction manager. So Carter Van Dyke has a master contract, and one of the duties in Appendix A, Section E, item number 6, is to, it's not that I've looked at this, is to certify the work that is being done versus plan. So he's been down there with a degree of frequency based on what they've been doing to certify yes or no, that you're in compliance, or you need to do this or you need to do that. Having said that, it is, I agree that it needs more supervision at this point now that things are really in high production on a daily basis. So should we have done this a little bit sooner? Maybe. Have we addressed it? He's already started that role. This is just memorializing, at this point.
Okay, and I noticed on the computer tonight at home, your agenda, is this guy a borough employee now?
He works 24 hours.
He's the DPW
He's the
super.
DPW department chair.
Superintendent.
Okay, so what's his salary?
63,000.
63,000.
Yeah,
And we're gonna pay him another $1,000 to do a job he should be doing?
so it's a little bit complicated, but we want him so he works 3 days a week.
Yes.
We want him physically here 4 to 5 days a week.
Understand.
So this will involve more physical site trips to town, even though it's the same number of hours. So it is paid only as a limited time stipend of $500 a pay period, if I recall correctly?
Yeah,
Or
basically
$250
$1,000 a month.
$250 a week to come in for the extra day.
Okay, one further thing too.
Ron, before you go on, can I give you a different perspective on
Sure.
the Carter Van Dyke issue? Because I don't
Sure.
I think Don was being very polite in how he said it. It was our impression that Carter Van Dyke was gonna be managing this project.
Yes, I thought it was in a contract.
That's what I thought too, okay? And some of us started noticing some things in the park that simply
Yes.
didn't make sense, even to the layperson.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to
No,
correct you,
this
Ron.
is, yeah.
Okay, but I want it to be known. And we met with, and so Don Lemon and GP Caminiti and the mayor called a meeting with Carter Van Dyke, which occurred on Monday. I was there,
Okay.
because I was one of the ones who was perhaps most vocal about some of the deficiencies.
Second most vocal.
Second most vocal that I noticed, okay? And that's when those oh no, we're not the project manager. Well, wait a minute, that's in your contract. Oh, no. So in order to see that this project gets finished up properly, and there's daily supervision, like honestly what we expected, we spoke to our DPW superintendent, and he agreed to take on that additional responsibility in addition to running the DPW. And that is why that resolution is on tonight. Did we expect to do it? No. Is the cost worth it? It's absolutely worth it. At the point where this project is, which is, I'm gonna say 70% complete or so, is that about right, guys? You need somebody there.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I spent some time up on the sidewalk just looking at what was being done today, and also I walked down through there after everybody had left. I did notice though on the gazebo, you have a railing that comes down off those steps. Now,
So subject, go on, we want to hear what you have to say.
that
was my
railing,
notice.
okay, the railing is fine, but when you look at the railing and you look at the distance from where the posts are to the edge of the step, one is about 6 inches and the one down at the bottom is about 2.5 inches. So they're not in line by any means, and they should be. And I don't know if that was because maybe the railing was too long and whoever installed them just said, this is good enough, let's put it in. That should be corrected. The amount of money you're spending, that should be done right. Whatever the distance is from one post to the second post should be the same. It should not be,
I think it's, you should go walk in. It's okay if you walk in. I think the reason that was done that way is because the steps flare out towards the bottom.
correct, and I understand that. But the measurements of the distance between the two posts from the edge of the step should be the same. It shouldn't be, one should be 6 inches and the other one's 2.5 inches.
We have a rather lengthy list of fit and finish items, very lengthy.
Since you mentioned it, that railing was right on the list. That iron railing was right on the list.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
As well as the construction of the steps.
Yeah, I heard that was a bit of a mess up as well.
We don't know.
We don't know yet.
We're not quite sure the proper footing is under there.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's,
It was a 2-hour meeting yesterday, and the list is longer than my arm.
now, who came up though with what's wrong with the electric that's down there now? I know it's old, I know that. Well, this guy wants 25,000 now to put in new electric?
So Ron, it was a combination of a couple of things. So first, there's an aesthetic
Yeah,
portion.
I agree.
That's worth a sum of money, but the bigger portion was the electric coming out of the dentist's office was inadequate to handle the new load in the park. So this is higher amperage service coming in, bypassing the dentist's office completely, and going directly to a metered connection in the park that will power the
Yeah.
park.
Okay.
I
It's
think the
also
additional
relocating.
loads, Ron, that were left out of the initial calculation were the loads for the fountains,
The facts, yeah.
because the fountains are not new.
No, but also tell them that the other reason is because the other electric was sitting right in the middle of the park and it looked awful.
That's the aesthetic
You know?
portion.
Yeah, the aesthetics,
The
yeah.
aesthetics,
Yeah, we're spending a lot of money in the park. We want an electrical
Correct.
panel box in the middle of the
And it was
grass.
hodgepodge over the years and it was a train wreck.
Yeah, my last comment will be, it looks beautiful. I like all the mulch that's put around down there. You better start looking for some new help for the road department, because they're gonna be spending a lot of time pulling weeds.
mean additional help.
Additional, yes, additional help. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
8 minutes, Mr. Hill.
We were answering some of his questions. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody in the public?
Just a question.
Step up. We know who you are, but we need your name and
Yeah,
address.
Kingsley Hill, private resident for this question. You said something about, in the discussion of the rehabilitation zone resolution, that somebody was going to be putting storage units, some buildings may be made
No,
available for storage.
that was actually, it's quasi part of the same project, simply because it's the same, it involves the same developer. But what's going, the storage units, that would be the old Peapack Bank building, FinPro on 206, which the developer is buying, and he's gonna be putting affordable units up there as well, but he's gonna convert that into self-storage.
So Melillo is gonna buy the property from.
FinPro.
FinPro.
From FinPro.
He has a contract.
And convert it to storage units.
Correct.
Okay, useful building for that. And what's with the the car charging system?
He asked for, we required him because FinPro had an obligation for 5 affordable housing units. I don't know if you recall.
I remember.
Actually, you and I were on the board
No,
together.
what he was going to,
I remember.
was
The 20
he wanted
of the
he's
5.
it's covering charging stations going at the FinPro site,
Okay,
which
So
the
we
developer
needed
wants
those
to do.
5 still, okay? So we required those 5, but he also asked, besides the storage facility, for the charging station.
He's paying for it, but
He wants to install a charging
Yeah,
station.
well, yeah, okay, I hadn't heard, obviously not on land use board anymore, I don't understand, I didn't hear that change in use for that. And that's the change of use thing that.
That's the overlay.
The overlay
Yeah,
that
that's
you were
an
talking about also.
overlay
is
on that lot.
The ability to put storage units in FinPro building.
Yeah, correct.
And I'm trying to organize it in one final question, and hopefully I'm still a few minutes or something.
Go ahead.
Is there going to be affordable housing in that building also, or it's just storage? So there's gonna be 5 affordable housing units and then the remainder of the building.
Correct. What was most important to the borough and most compelling to us to even consider a rezoning of that, a use on that property, additional use on that property, was simply because it had an obligation of 5, and we could not give that up. That is part of our settlement. So we insisted that if he wants this, those 5 have to be.
they're not gonna be in the building, they're gonna be separate
They'll be separate.
on the property.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
okay. Not attached to the back of the building?
No, separate. Probably where the parking lots are, whatever, but that's all.
And is FinPro leaving that building then completely?
Selling it.
No?
When they sell it, I assume they will.
Yep.
No, they're under contract with Malilla to.
No, but when they sell it, they're
When
leaving.
they sell it,
Oh,
they'll
yeah,
leave.
yeah, yeah.
FinPro won't be in that building.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, all right, that's all I had, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Just, I support the police.
Thank
That was my other role, I just sat on it.
Thank you. Any other public comments on agenda items? Okay, seeing none, closing that. Do we need to, resolution 10722? Executive session?
Yes.
We do need that?
Oh, I'm sorry, do we?
Do we? I don't think we do.
There's
No, okay. So we'll pull resolution 10722.
Wait, before everyone leaves, thank you for coming.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you, we appreciate when people come very much.
You don't want to see us say all in favor, we're leaving? Okay, adjournment, is there any further business? Seeing none, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Meeting is adjourned. Next meeting of the mayor and council will be on May 10th, 2022 at 7 PM. Thank you very much.
You guys still interested?
I didn't want to pass that in the middle of the meeting. I figured that was rude.